Well, it is my privilege today to welcome to this church an old friend of my grandfather's and of this ministry. He's been here several times, and I know many of you here in the church and watching on television are big fans and have high hopes for Dr. Ben Carson.
Yeah, it's so nice to be with you, my third generation of Schullers.
Yeah. Yeah, Ben, this is just such an amazing privilege for me to have you back with us. This is the first time we've met, but
Yes.
you and my grandfather were dear friends.
Yes.
You've been such an encouragement to our viewers around the world on the Hour of Power, and we are so thrilled that you are running for president. And we wanted to hear from you today about your faith and your background. Maybe we can begin with the common ground you have with my grandfather, which is Horatio Alger.
Yes.
Which is a very prestigious award given to people who've...
About 10 to 12 people a year
Yeah.
who come from very bad beginnings, but end up at the top of whatever their endeavor is.
Yeah.
And it's a very inspirational group of people. Many of the names the audience would know. You wouldn't have any idea that they came from such horrible backgrounds, but you know, I always say it's not where you start, it's where you finish that really makes the difference. And you know, God has put within each of us so much potential. And if you develop that the right way, the sky is the limit.
I love that line. It's not where you start, it's where you finish. And you're living proof of that. You started in Detroit. You were your mom was a single mom.
Yes.
She was illiterate, and yet it was important for her that you guys read and you
Yes.
learned and got an education.
Well, you know, she believed in education. You know, she grew up in rural Tennessee, couple dozen in her family. I mean, it was a huge family. She was shifted from home to home, never really felt at home any place, cobbled together as much education as she could. By the time she was 13, that was like a third grade education. Got married at age 13 and moved to Detroit. Years later, found out her husband was a bigamist. And, you know, if anybody had a right to feel like a victim, it was her. But she absolutely refused to be a victim, absolutely refused to feel sorry for herself, and wouldn't make excuses and wouldn't allow us to make excuses. And we thought she was a very mean person because, you know, because we were doing so poorly academically, after careful prayer, she came up with the idea of turning off the TV and making us read books and submitting to her written book reports. And we didn't know she couldn't read them. And, but what a difference it made because we were desperately poor. But whenever I opened up a book, I wasn't poor anymore.
Yeah.
I could go any place, I could be anybody, I could do anything. I began to know things that no one else knew, even the really smart kids, they had no idea. And that just inspired me. My mother no longer had to make me read books. She would say, Benjamin, put the book down and eat your food. I was always reading. And it really completely changed the trajectory of my life and made me into a doer rather than an excuse maker. We want our young people to grow up with a can-do attitude as opposed to the what can you do for me attitude, which is encouraged by so many.
You know, I'm 33, and that seems like a growing thing for some in my generation, is this sort of deep sense of entitlement, victimhood, and that's something that kind of makes your blood boil a little, doesn't it?
Well, primarily because I see so much potential and talent being wasted, sitting around waiting for somebody else to do something for you. You know, we need that talent developed so that you can come up with a new energy source, or, you know, a cure for cancer, or a whole host of things. That's why God gave us these sophisticated brains, not to sit around and complain.
Yeah, and of course, education, that's your big thing, isn't it? You want to get kids reading, you want to get people reading.
Absolutely. And we, part of the Carson Scholars Fund, which is active in all 50 states now, we recognize students who achieve at the highest academic levels, regardless of their background, and who also demonstrate that they care about other people. But we also put in reading rooms all over the country. We have multiple ones here in California. And we particularly target Title I schools, where a lot of kids come from homes with no books, they go to a school with no library. They don't learn to love reading. Many of them end up dropping out. 70 to 80% of high school dropouts are functionally illiterate. So we try to truncate that way downstream to change the trajectory of their lives. And these are the kinds of things that we need to be doing. You know, Jesus admonished us, you know, to care for the poor. It is our responsibility to take care of those around us. It's not the government's responsibility. It's our responsibility. And people respond much better when they have a relationship with the person who is extending the hand. You know, and whether you want to admit it or not, we do have a Judeo-Christian foundation based upon solid values and principles. And those are things that distinguished us in many cases from other people. And we don't need to try to be like anybody else. We're who we are.
You know, one of the biggest questions that I have as a pastor now, you know, we, of course, always want to shepherd anybody from whatever party they're from. But the question we're interested in is, how is your Christian faith going to impact the way you lead? Because you are a strong Christian, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, your values and your principles, whether you will admit it or not, play a tremendous role in the way you perceive things and in the way you react to things. And there is no question that, you know, I love God with all my heart, and I believe that you should treat your neighbor as you would want to be treated yourself. And those are the guiding principles in what you do. And it makes all the difference in the world in how you perceive people. You know, there are some people who say, well, you don't like these people, you don't like this group. There is no group that I dislike or hate, because Jesus died for everybody. Not everybody accepts the sacrifice that he made, but he did. And we're admonished, you know, to love our neighbors and even your enemies. So I just want to be the kind of person who treats everyone fairly, who gives everyone a fair opportunity, not picking winners and losers, not picking the parts of laws that you like and discounting the ones that you don't like, but working to try to create something, particularly in a pluralistic society, where everybody wins. You know, you can't in a pluralistic society take the my way or the highway attitude and have peace.
Well, something my grandpa used to say is that I'd rather believe the best in someone and be wrong than believe the worst in someone and be right.
Well, that's why your grandpa was a great man. That's cool.
And do you think that has been a guiding principle for you? Because it sounds like all you did was simply assume the best. You know, they just thought I was an orderly because maybe I'm young, and you certainly were young.
Right.
A doctor, 33, you became chief at
Yes.
Johns Hopkins. It's incredible. He's sitting across from a super genius. You know, it's really great.
Well, you know, here's what's happened in my life. God has been such an important part, and he has guided my life. He has opened doors continually. A lot of times they weren't doors that I particularly planned on going through. Certainly this whole political arena was not anything that I had any intention of doing. But, you know, there were so many people clamoring for me to do it, and I started considering it and looking and praying for wisdom and guidance. And then I finally just said, okay, Lord, as long as you keep opening the doors, I will walk through them. And if you shut the door, I'll sit down.
Great. As we sort of wrap up the interview, what is the one thing you would say to someone who just thinks they can't do anything with their life?
I would say, just remember, the person who has the most to do with what happens to you is you. It's not the environment, and it's not someone else. If you have a normal brain, think about the capacity that you have. Billions and billions of neurons, hundreds of billions of interconnections. You remember everything you've ever seen, everything you've ever heard. You can process more than 2 million bits of information in 1 second. You cannot overload that brain with information. If you learned one new fact every second, it would take you more than 3 million years to challenge the capacity of your brain. You know, when you have that kind of firepower, why would you even spend any time worrying about what you can't do? You need to be thinking about what you can do. We're made in the image of God, and He's no dummy.
Great. Well, what an honor it is. And can we give him a hand again and just thank him for being here? Dr. Carson, thank you. What an honor and privilege to have you. It really is.
A real pleasure. Thank you so much.